up guys, Chris 210s here. I got some calls about how to take care of your clutch on the go-kart for the shoe clutches that are required in a lot of classes. So here I have a Premier Stinger clutch, also known as a Noram Stinger. This is it's my favorite design out of most of the metal shoe clutches because it's got a nice sturdy bell with this ring here that helps keep the bell round. It's got 3 shoes in it, and this clutch could be set up for inboard or outboard use. So to take it apart, we're going to need a couple tools. We're going to need an Allen wrench. We're going to need a pair of snap ring pliers. We're going to need a flathead screwdriver and a die grinder, can of brake clean, and a piece of 80 grit emery. So we'll go ahead and start disassembling this clutch. I'm going to start with the snap ring pliers and remove the snap ring by the driver gear. So we take that off, and now the bell slides off. To take the gear out, we'll remove this spiral ring that holds it on, and you could take a flathead screwdriver or anything to pry it up, or your fingernail. See if I can get it. I'll take the screwdriver, and I'm just going to pry up one end of that to get it over the driver gear, and then I'm going to just take it off like a spring. Just push it and take it. I know it's kind of hard to see, but take it right off. So then the driver gear will pop out. Just give it a gentle tap here. Just help it along its way. And now our drum is disassembled. So we'll put that to the side. We'll focus on the clutch. You have your thrust washer and thrust bearing here that you got to take off. So we'll take that off. Then we'll flip the clutch over. And generally how I hold it is I'll put my finger across these 2 bolts and my finger across this bolt. And I'll hold it like that. And I'll go ahead and start loosening the screws. These ones happen to be really tight, so I'll just crack them loose. And then holding my fingers like that so the back sides of the screws don't fall out, I'll unscrew the screws. This is a 1/8 inch Allen wrench, for any of you who might be wondering what size Allen wrench those screws are. We'll remove those. Then we'll flip the clutch back over, and we'll take the back plate out with the pieces that hold the screws. So once that's completed, now we see we have access to the shoes and springs. So what I do to get this off is I'll take a flathead screwdriver, and I just gently pry without bending this plate. I'll just gently pry up on the shoes, and as you can see, they start sliding off the hub. Push. And we'll just carefully work those shoes off the hub. Now when I get the shoes down about halfway on the hub, I'll put the clutch like this and hold it with my hand, and I'll just push the shoes with the flathead until they slide off the hub. And that's it. Now you have your 3 shoes off the hub of the clutch. I'll take the springs out. Those just pretty much pop out. They're held in with hooks on the end. Take those springs, put them to the side. So now we have our clutch disassembled. And this clutch is set up for inboard use, and the way I tell that is, as I'm looking at the clutch, the hub is going to the left-hand side of the clutch. If you wanted it set up for outboard use, the hub would go to the right-hand side of the clutch. And to flip the hub around, you would remove this snap ring, and the hub would come off, and you'd flip it around and just put it back and put the snap ring back on. So we're not doing that with this clutch now, so we're just going to leave that alone. So now we have the shoes. So as you can see on the shoes, these shoes, they've worn pretty evenly. They have a nice dark coating on them. And this is where you start running into problems. When you get this dark coating that begins forming on the shoes, that's a hardened skin of material, so it will cause the clutch to slip more. Now for a national racer, You know, generally we have multiple clutches set up ready to go for the cart, so we'll have practice clutches and race clutches, and they're always rebuilt when we go to the race. So for a local racer who doesn't want to spend that much in rebuilding clutches, if you take good care of the clutch and you do what we do here every couple runs, the shoes will last longer. If you let too much of the skin build up on the shoe, then you're going to have to change the shoes. So what we do is we take our 80 grit emery and we go ahead and we just sand the surface of the shoes and knock off that glaze that's on the shoes. You can see the shoes coming up nice and shiny, nice and silver now. These shoes weren't in too bad a shape because this clutch was taken care of. So we go ahead, we do this a nice sand, and I recommend to do this by hand, just like I'm doing it, because you see some guys using a grinder on this, and what that does is cause high and low spots in the shoe, which will give you less engagement to the drum and distort the shape of the shoe. So I just recommend doing it by hand with the 80 grit emery. You see it comes, if you take care of the clutch, it comes off relatively fast. Let's sand this up real quick. And the idea is to get them nice and clean. You want to get them as clean as possible. And obviously the cleaner they are, the better they're going to work. The more of that scale you can take off of the clutch, off of the shoe, the better the shoe's going to work. Go ahead and do that. We got these nice and clean. Okay, so the shoes have been cleaned. Now we're going to work on the drum. So for the drum, I recommend that you also sand that by hand and clean up the drum with the 80 grit emery, which you can do, but it takes quite a long time because the drums are case hardened on the inside, making the material here on the inside really hard. So generally what I do is I have a little tool that we use where we put this in a drill. And the drum of the clutch goes right on the end of that tool. Go ahead and screw that on there. Give that a nice tighten.
Basically making your own lathe.
Yeah, basically. And that's set up on the drill. Then I take my die grinder with an 80 grit Tootsie Roll. Let me see if we can get this on the camera here good so you can see it. And I'll hold the die grinder in here, but I try not to stay in one spot. I try to move smoothly as I spin the drill. I spin the drill in reverse so the bolt doesn't come loose. That's how I clean up the drums. It's real easy to do. It makes it a lot simpler to clean up the drum and a lot faster. So then we'll go ahead, we'll take this off. Get a good shot of the finish we get in there. So that's the kind of finish you're looking for in the drum. You don't want the drum too smooth, but you also don't want it too coarse either. That's a nice consistent finish all the way around. You can see there's no grooves in this drum. This was a clutch that we had blueprinted, so the drum was cut on this and made true, so you could see, you know, that's why the shoes had such nice wear, and the drum has essentially no scores in it. It's basically almost like brand new. So once you do that, it's going to be back to its original glory, and we'll go ahead and shoot everything with a little bit of brake cleanup. is the pieces of the hub here where the shoes sit. Sometimes they can get packed up with dust, and I've seen the dust stick on here to the hub. So what you want to make sure is, you want to make sure that your shoes move nice and freely on this hub, and that they fit, you know, they have plenty of room on that hub to move nice and freely, which these do. So we're gonna go ahead and start putting the clutch back together. So these shoes go on in a certain way. So just to get the right orientation, you could lay them on the clutch just to make sure that they're right. If you put them on the wrong way, you'll know it, because it'll look something like that. So you have them all the right way. Then what I do is I take the shoes and I lay them on the table here just like this. Then I'll take the springs, and this is where people have a lot of trouble, is they tell me, how do you get the springs on? And this is the technique that I use. So I lay the shoes on the table, I put the springs on the shoes, once you get the springs on the shoes, I go ahead and I put my fingers in here to hold a little tension on the springs so they don't come off, and I transfer it over to the clutch, and I lay it on top of the clutch. And what I do is I'll kick this out a little bit so it'll start on the hub. And just the way we took it off, we're gonna put them back on. So I have these on here on an angle here, and I'm gonna go ahead and take my palms and I'm just gonna push the shoes right on the hub. And that's a real easy way to put it on. I've seen guys not take the clutch apart and try to stretch the springs across here, and it's just, this is the way I've found is the easiest to do it. And that's it, our springs and shoes are back on. One thing you want to check when you do it that way is that the springs stayed in the shoes completely, because I've had cases where when I put them on, the spring will come out a little bit, and if you don't notice it, it'll pop out while you're on the track. So these all stayed in real nice. So we'll go ahead and we'll begin to reassemble it. So we have our back plate. I put the bolts through the back plate, and I hold it again like I had it before, and I'll lay these into the hub of the clutch, and I'll grab it again just like that so they don't fall out, and I'll go ahead and reinsert the screws. Now, I do recommend putting a little Loctite on these screws. I've had cases where I've had customers tell me they backed out over time. So these are definitely, on these Stingers, you want to check these screws periodically. And also a little Loctite's not a bad idea, a little blue Loctite. And I go ahead and just tighten them up. Now, I generally don't hold back on these screws back here because they seem to bite pretty well. And you can tighten the screws without having to hold back with a screwdriver or anything. That's pretty much 99.9% of the case. If it doesn't want to tighten and the back is spinning, then obviously you're going to have to hold it with a screwdriver back here. So now the main part of our clutch is back together. We're going to take our thrust washer. We're going to clean that off real good. Here at Snap Your Neck Clutches, we don't use any grease on the thrust washer. We put that right in there dry. Now we're going to go back to our drum. We're going to put our driver gear back in. We'll snap that back into the drum. Another common question, how do you put the spiral rings on? And how I do it is I open the ring up like a spring. I open the ring up just like a spring, and I hold this down here with my index finger. And I thread, I know it's going to be hard to see, but I thread that first side on first. And then you just move it like a spring, and it'll find itself and go right into the grooves. And that's it. So now that's back in. We're going to reinstall the drum. Put the bearing in the driver here. We're going to reinstall the drum. We're going to take the snap ring. You can use snap ring pliers. I like to just use my thumbs. And I just snap that right back on there. And that's it. We got a good clutch here. It's got a little bit of end play in the belt, which is what you want, so everything moves freely. And this clutch has been cleaned up. And I recommend doing that, you know, at least once during the race day, at least before qualifying. You know, practice with the clutch. Go ahead and sand it during qualifying. Before qualifying, go out and run your races for the day, and then do that again when you get home. For national guys, like when we go to run the nationals, we have clutches built for each car for practice and the race, just in an effort to save time when we were running the Stinger clutches, in an effort to save time in the pits. So that's why we did that. It's a little more expensive, but we need the time in the pits to, you know, deal with other things that, you know, you normally deal with at a national. But for a club guy, if he does this routine, like I said, once a day, and when he gets home, the shoes will last quite a long time, and you should be good to go for many races to come. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Please like and subscribe at the YouTube channel. We're going to have more tech videos coming up. The next video is going to be on a carburetor setup. A general carburetor setup. I'm going to show you guys how to set up the carburetor on a Briggs 206, and it's a real good setup, and we've won a lot of races with it. So stay tuned for that, and I want to thank everybody, and again, like and subscribe.